So Sam, what's your fondest memory of Dr. Buck?
Well, my fondest memory of Dr. Buck is when our Monsters Renaissance class, we went to the Mutter Museum with him. And so we got to go all around the Mutter Museum, look at all the cool exhibits there. And he actually got us a tour guide. Our class was only about 4 people going. And then afterwards we went out and he introduced us to coal-fired pizza. And it was delicious. And, we just had a great time that night.
And if you had one thing you could tell Dr. Buck right now, with his retirement, what would it be?
If I could tell Dr. Buck one thing about his retirement, I would say just thank you. He's really changed what it means to be a history major, and for the better for me. And he's really got me enthusiastic about learning all sorts of history. I learned a lot about research under him, and I'd just like to thank him for all that he's done for me, my major.
I remember when I was first freshman here, my first history class was with Dr. Buck, and it was like History 100. And I thought, well, this is interesting, but I wish I was doing some harder stuff. And I was starting to wonder if I made the right decision. But he brought me to his office one day, and he was talking to me about what my specialty was going to be, what I needed to learn to get there. And he really made me feel better about it. And just out of the blue, he asked me, can you read like Middle English, like Renaissance English? I was like, I've never tried. And he goes, well, let's try it right now. And he pulled out a book and he taught me how to read it, and we had a fun time. And I thought, okay, I really like this place. These professors are great. And I'm glad that I met him and had that experience with him.
And so knowing that he's retiring this year, if you could leave him with, saying one thing, what would that be?
I think that it's going to be really strange to have Widener without Dr. Buck. I was shocked when I heard he was leaving. It's going to be strange, but he's really going to be missed. But he'll be off doing great things anyway. He always will, so.
So what is your fondest memory of Dr. Buck?
I think my fondest memory is one of the first memories I have of him. Is when I had first started here. It was maybe the first or second faculty meeting that we had in Arts and Sciences, and he was actually giving a sabbatical report. And I was so impressed with the way he had jumped back into his research and the passion that he had for his field of study and the work that he had done. And to me it was amazing that this was somebody who had been a full-time administrator for so long, and given the opportunity to get back into the field that he loves, the way he just jumped into it and the work that he was doing. And I was just so impressed with that. And that's the memory that sticks out for me.
And knowing that Dr. Buck is retiring at the end of this year, what are some parting words that you would have for him?
Well, I wish him continued health and happiness, and that he never lose that passion for his subject and his research, and that he stay active in that field even though he's retiring from the university.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So Dr. Roth, if you had to describe Dr. Buck, what would you say?
There are many good things that I could say about Dr. Buck, but I think that to sum it up, I would say that he has been an extremely committed member of the history department. He's had so many other responsibilities and roles at Widener, but I really feel like the history department is his home. And he has, especially since he's stopped being provost, he has been completely committed and really has, gone above and beyond. He's opened his home up for the history picnic several times. He's taken students to conferences, and he's just overall been a great member of the faculty within history. A lot of people, after they had stopped being an administrator, would have come back into the faculty and acted like they were in charge or something, but he's always been just incredibly respectful and very egalitarian. And he has just made the history department a really cohesive group, and I've appreciated that. And I just would want to say that, I know you're going to be retired, and you're going to be technically not part of us, but the history department will always be your home. And I hope that you'll come back, share with us what you're doing, find out what we're doing, and always consider yourself to have a place here with us.
Thank you. Dr. Parker, if you had to describe Dr. Buck, what would you say?
He has always been incredibly supportive of the arts. Actually, my reason for being here is because he created my position. Came in and he took me around schools trying to figure out where I should be performing with my group that did not exist yet. Had me all over the place, sent me off to meet various people, and he has been over the years incredibly supportive of what the students do, what I'm doing, and it's very nice to have somebody who shares that same interest in your passion.
What has it been like to work with Dr. Buck?
Wonderful. He's interested, he's supportive, he's ready to try new things. Some of the pieces that we've tried on concerts he's not necessarily been, as enthusiastic about because they're sometimes modern, but he's been really, really great for the students. And one of the reasons to start the program is to get the kids involved in something outside the classroom, and it's been perfect.
And so if you had any final parting words for Dr. Buck, what would they be?
Enjoy the retirement and go to lots of concerts.
Dr. Votnick, if you had to describe Dr. Buck, what would you say?
Perhaps what first comes to mind is that he's a really serious scholar. In terms of describing, he's very much into his scholarship, and he gets excited about what he does, and you cannot avoid hearing stories about a certain period of history when you're having lunch with him, because it's very exciting and it's very interesting. It's completely very different with my field. That's one thing that will come in mind. And the other thing that will come in mind is integrity. Larry will do what he thinks the right thing to do, and not what's the convenient thing to do, what's the popular thing to do. He just will stick and do what's the right thing to do. So I think that a person with a lot of integrity, with a lot of so those are I think that are the two main characteristics that I will think about Larry. It's his integrity, and his scholarship. You can go on and try to describe him as a person, but I think that, in terms of his quality as a university professor, those are probably the things, and those play completely different roles when he was an administrator, and he didn't have a chance to do scholarship, and the moment that he got out of that job, his scholarship bloomed, and I was not aware for that the very few years I was here, because Larry was in an administrator role, and after he stopped being an administrator, that side of scholar was revealed to me, at least, in terms of that. But I've been fond of Larry for a long time. We've been friends, so it's been fun to see him in that role, in the scholar role, rather than the administrator role.
If you had to describe Dr. Buck, what would you say?
If I had to describe Dr. Buck in a phrase, a word, I would probably call him the Dos Equis guy, the most interesting man in the world. There's no other guy like Dr. Buck. He truly is a character, and when you think of him, you think of all the phrases that they say in those commercials, that he probably has a mom that has a tattoo that says son. Just the most interesting man on the planet. Has a story for everything. Very smart, capable man. Hope he enjoys his retirement.
And so, do you have any final or parting words for Dr. Buck?
Yeah, actually I do. Dr. Buck, I just wanted to say on behalf of myself and the history department, faculty, students, we just want to thank you for your over 40 years of service. We hope you enjoy your retirement. And lastly, I know that you're a stickler for guys that wear hats, so just for this, I'm going to put my hat back on since class is dismissed. Thank you and enjoy your retirement.
If you had to describe Dr. Buck, what would you say?
Super intelligent, one of the smartest guys I've ever known. incredible work ethic, one of the hardest working guys I've ever known. I mean, really shaped the university over several decades. But also one of the funniest guys I've ever known, and that's not something that necessarily a lot of people know. So those three things, that's a pretty good profile, I think.
And do you have a fondest memory of Dr. Buck?
Well, I have a lot of fond memories of him. I worked closely with him in the Provost's office for 5 years, I think, and we've remained close since. But you know, going to illustrate his sense of humor, there are actually two stories that are linked in my mind. In both cases, you know, I saw Larry Buck, the provost, a very serious guy, universally respected, laugh like a teenage girl, or maybe even somebody younger. There was a case, there was a situation a few years ago when the dining hall was being remodeled, not this latest remodeling, but the one done about 10 years ago. And so we all had to eat in the web room. So this was during the summer, and so there were a lot of these, a lot of local kids on campus. I guess they were here for camps or something. And anyway, Larry and I were having lunch together in there one day, and he got something on his plate that was suspicious looking, mystery meat or something, I don't know. But one of these little local kids walks up to Larry and he looks at his plate and he says, "You're going to eat that? That's nasty." Larry lost it. He laughed. We both laughed for a good 5 minutes, and everybody at our table was sort of like, "What are you guys laughing about?" But he had a great sense of humor, and this happened another time, actually, in a faculty meeting. I was sitting with him, and somebody said something that broke us up, and it reminded me of being like in high school or junior high, again, when you start laughing and you can't control it, and it gets to the point of embarrassment. So, you know, I have a lot of memories of Larry, but I guess those two sort of linked memories kind of stick out because they show a side of him that I think a lot of people don't know about.
And if you had any final words for Dr. Buck, what would they be?
Well, this is tough. Again, I guess what I would say is, Larry, I'm at Widener University because of you. You hired me to come here. You totally changed my life. You gave me a career. You were always really supportive when we worked together in the Provost's office. But even once we both moved on from the Provost's office, you remained a very good friend, somebody I always knew that I could count on for advice or just maybe a sounding board or somebody just to sort of share life with. So I'm really, really sad that you're retiring for myself and for the university, but I'm really happy for you.
Hi Larry, congratulations on your decision to retire. I can only recommend it. On behalf of Ruth, who is the camera woman, and myself, I wish you all the very best for the future and to your family and everybody you interact with. As a special feature on the day of your retirement, we will be sending you the Pagan Bells from Böhmitz as a live concerto. That will be in the next film clip, if it works. Okay, it's Sunday, April 22nd, 2012. We are in front of the Pagan Bells of Böhmitz, and to the left we have Axel, who rings the heavy bell to the right. To the right we have Rüdiger, who rings the second bell to the left, and this guy with a Widener tie, that's me ringing the little bell. Okay.
Das ist doch nicht so gut.
Nee.
Kannst du mal Stopp machen?
Ja, macht sie auch.
Dr. Sarembis, if you had to, how would you describe Dr. Buck?
Inspirational, at least with respect to me. He was my inspiration for becoming Associate Dean. I don't know if you knew this, but I was Associate Dean for 9 years. And I know I was agonizing over whether to become the Associate Dean. And I looked over and saw what Larry was doing as the Provost. And I figured anybody with zero personal skills or the guile of a ground squirrel could be Provost, and I certainly could be Associate Dean. So he was a great inspiration to me.
And if you have any final words for Dr. Buck, what would they be?
Well, they're just the thank you. Thank him for all that he's done for me and the university. Just for example, when he was acting president, one of the things he did was give people raises with these bucks. And they're great. Still use them in McDonald's and Walmart. Great stuff.
So, Mrs. Durkin, what's your fondest memory of Dr. Buck?
Well, I don't have a specific memory of Dr. Buck. It's more his whole area of expertise in computer science and technology. Susan, the Dean's secretary, has repeatedly mentioned how many times Dr. Buck has had to help her with the fax machine. And then I remember when he taught me to use the scanner in the humanities office, he made me a little cheat sheet here so that, you know, I wouldn't forget, because, you know, as you get older, your memory goes. And I'm praying that my new computer comes before he comes to campus, before he leaves campus, so that he can show me how to get onto Word. I heard that Dr. Norton, from her, that Windows 7 is completely different from my computer right now, and that Dr. Buck was there to help her with that transition. And in my opinion, 50 years from now, when textbooks are used in grade schools and high schools, our grandchildren and their grandchildren will learn what a technical genius Dr. Buck was. And again, they may still have the written word wrong in the history books and mistake him for a medieval historian. Larry, I really enjoyed working with you. I wish you all the best. Thank you.
So Keith, what's your fondest memory of Dr. Buck?
Well, Dr. Buck was not only my advisor, he was my professor. And my first day at Widener, I had a class with him at 8 a.m. I remember walking in, and he started talking and lecturing, and I was thinking, what did I get myself into? I couldn't understand anything he was saying. I was looking around at other students thinking, I hope they don't know what he's saying either. And I was terrified. And then I met him as an advisor, and I walked into his office, and I looked at the bookshelf, and he was written some books, and he started talking to me, and I was like, I am still terrified. This man is way too intelligent for me. I can't handle this. But then we started talking, and he had some music on in the background. He had some classical music. We started talking about Stravinsky, some things I liked about music, and I felt a little more comfortable. And so my last class ever at Widener was with Dr. Buck. And I remember sitting in class and thinking, hey, I almost understand everything he's saying. Not everything, about 80% I'd say. But I felt like I accomplished something because I at least could understand what he was talking about. And so what I would say to Dr. Buck is thank you for being such a great professor and great advisor, and always being there for us. And I guess my honest memory would be of him, just his lectures and his talks in class, and just learning from him, because he's at such a higher level, as we all know as students. But it's an inspiration for us who want to get to that level.
So, Dr. Azadale, what's your relationship to Dr. Buck?
Well, I have known Larry for 34 years, very long. We had worked together in many different capacities. It was always pleasure and joy to work with him. He is a fantastic professional person. At the same time, I was the chair of the Provost Search Committee, where he applied for the position. We had many highly qualified candidates. We went through very, very rigorous candidate screening. Not only he came out as the best applicant, best candidate, he has proven that he was the best choice with his dedicated service for many, many years to Widener University as the Provost.
And so what are some favorite memories you have of Dr. Buck?
I think I can remember a couple. One of them was when I came home one night. It was in early June. There was a message from Larry Buck. He asked me to give him a call immediately, as soon as possible, without even talking to my wife. I picked up the phone, called his office. I said, Larry, this is me. He said, oh, hi, Savash. You are going to be the acting dean next week. I said, Larry, what? You are going to be the acting dean of the School of Business next week. Joe D'Angelo is leaving. I said, Larry, I'm going for a vacation. He said, no, you're not. You are going to be the acting dean. That was my pleasure for serving him for 1 year in that position. But my favorite story with Larry was that I was chairing the President Harris's inauguration committee. We had to make some ceremonies, festivities, and a lunch. It was in October. Larry was a member of the group. So while we are going for the details, Larry said, wait a minute, there is a problem here. I think there was a problem during former President Robert Bruce's inauguration. So he went to his office, came back with a folder, and there was one page in that folder. It was a red mark on it, attention. In that location where we are going to serve the lunch, there was at that time, crab apple tree. The note said that during October, this crab apple tree attracts lots of bees, and they really do attack people. We have to take care of this problem right now. It was funny, but it was a major problem, and we took care of it. Thanks to Larry, none of the guests were stung by the bees. Larry, personally, I'll miss you, and I wish you luck and the best in your retirement. Bye.
So, Dr. Robinson, what's your fondest memory of Dr. Buck?
Well, in addition to his impeccable pronunciation of German and Latin words at academic functions, honestly, I think my favorite memory of Larry is when he came back to the faculty and devoted himself to his discipline and got back involved in his wonderful scholarship. I always knew that Larry had a great respect for serious scholarship, and I'm so grateful that when he stopped being an administrator, I got to see him in action a little bit after he retired from the Provost's office.
And if you had to describe Dr. Buck, what would you say?
You could edit out. If I had to describe Larry, my first impression of Larry when I started here was that he was scary. But now I know that he's not scary Larry. That he's actually really funny, and he enjoys what he does. So there is a kind of, it might be weird to portray him this way, but I think there's some joy in Larry Buck.
And if you had any final words for Dr. Buck, what would they be?
I'm going to kill you. No. I'm really, really, really disappointed that Larry's retiring. And I wrote in his in the Humanities Division card, I said, I'm still really pissed about this. And I do kind of feel that way, Larry, because I was looking forward to growing old with you. Yeah, you just better stay in touch, Larry.
Norton, if you had to describe Dr. Buck, what would you say?
I would describe Dr. Buck as one of the most dedicated faculty members I have ever known here or elsewhere. This is a man who cares enormously about the institution, cares enormously about students, who has really devoted his life in every way to furthering higher education, but keeping the focus on the things that really matter.
And what will you miss most about him?
Well, I think the thing that I value about Larry most, and it's not just one thing, it's a combination of things, it's the package, as it were, is his elegance of thought and expression. He is a very clear thinker. He thinks deeply and carefully about things. And he expresses himself so beautifully. I'm always envious of him in faculty meetings or just in general conversation. His way of expressing himself is simply elegant and eloquent. And he's a delight to listen to, a delight to speak with, and reminds me always that there's much to aspire to.
And if you had any final parting words for Dr. Buck, what would they be?
Well, I think what I would say, Larry, is thank you very much for hiring me. It is really on you, whether this is a good thing or bad thing, that I'm here. If you hadn't been moving on to administration, there wouldn't have been a position here for me. And if you hadn't been on the search committee, I don't know that I would have been selected as the candidate for this job. So I'm very grateful and do thank you very much. And with that, I have one parting gift. A limerick I couldn't resist. There once was a professor named Buck who taught all his students to read about popes' asses. The stories were crude and even quite lewd. No wonder students flocked to his classes. Thank you.
So, Dr. Ward, what are some of your fondest memories of Dr. Buck?
When I arrived here in 1980, Larry was an associate professor of history, soon to become dean of the college, and then provost of the university, and then president of the university, acting president for a year. And what I noticed from my first memories of Larry is a consistent devotion to students, that everything he seemed to do was focused on how can we make this program, this university, this major, this college better for students. More than anyone else, he is responsible for enhancing the quality of Widener over the past 30 years. In little ways, in big ways, but constant climbing the quality ladder with things like developing the honors program, support for faculty development, like provost grants, faculty development grants, and all the development work he did as administrator. The first question was always, how does this enhance the student's experience? How does this make Widener a better educational institution? And that's what I really think of when I think of the time that Larry was here that overlapped with my time.
And if you had to describe Dr. Buck, what would you say?
He's a model of the teacher-scholar. As Widener's emphasis has always been dual. You're a teacher and you're a scholar. And he lives up to both components of that perfectly. And we're going to miss him.
If you had any final parting words, what would they be?
Larry, we're going to miss you, so come back, enjoy the fine dining at the cafeteria, and come back often. Thanks.
So Tom, if you had to describe Dr. Buck, what would you say?
I would say Dr. Buck, since day one I knew that he knew exactly what he was talking about. He's extremely knowledgeable. He's always helped me out with my research in the number of different research papers I've written for him. Man, he knows everything, and he knows how to make it entertaining at times, and that's exactly how I would describe Dr. Buck, as entertaining, but he knows exactly what's going on.
And so if you had any final parting words for him, what would they be?
I would say enjoy retirement. You had a long career here at Widener, and I know you made the best out of it, so that's what I would say. Congratulations.
Well, now being on this side of the camera, I think that my favorite and my fondest memory of Dr. Buck, it's hard to choose from my from my favorite memories. I've had him 5 times for different classes, and I think the one thing that I'll always remember is just sitting there in the lectures and just sitting there in class and thinking of how it felt like being a little kid again with story time. Because the way that he teaches and the passion that he has for his subject and the way that he talks to us and just everything about that class just makes you feel like a little kid, and you soak it up like a sponge. And if I had to try to describe Dr. Buck, the Pecksniffian is not a word that I would use. Rather, I think he's probably one of the most intelligent guys I've ever met. And I have a lot of respect for him because he's always been extremely professional, he's always been very generous, and he's always really taken care of myself, other history majors, and that's something I'm always going to remember, is going over to his office and talking about, what should my topic be for my research paper, or not being able to find sources, and finding that on his bookshelf he's got about 10 books that could help me out. I think that's the stuff that I'm going to remember the most, and he's going to be really missed. I know I'm going to miss him, and it's going to be a different Widener next year without him. So Dr. Buck, be sure to visit a lot. Be sure to keep in touch, and congratulations on your retirement. You've definitely earned it, and I wish you the best of luck with your book, with your travels, with everything else. Thank you.